The Valley, a Phoenix Suns podcast. Take one.
Welcome, everybody, to the Valley of Phoenix Suns podcast. I'm Ethan Shutt, joined by Philip Russell and Ryan Shutt, and we are going to have ourselves a little trade deadline special as we are recording this Monday night. Last I looked down at my phone, the Suns are currently playing the Grizzlies, tied at 37, I believe. Hopefully they win so that you don't have to listen to this come Tuesday morning on a sour note. But we just wanted to take some time, as the trade deadline is 10 days from now, to go over some of the things that people might be talking about on the Reddit or the Twitter or the Facebook group, whatever you may have it, of some stuff that the Suns may do. Now, guys, going into this trade deadline, I do feel like we have something a little different to talk about, just because usually going into this time of year, the Suns are in such a bad spot that every single trade idea looks beautiful because something's changing. Maybe it'll turn our hopes around. Who knows? You know, usually it's maybe this magic one thing will bring us from the depths. But we got ourselves a different story on our hands, guys. What are your thoughts kind of going into the trade deadline, just in terms of where the team is right now?
Well, Ethan, you and I were even talking on lunch today. This, for the first time in a long time, feels like the first trade deadline.
Treadline, baby. I like that.
The old tread line.
Save word, get point across.
Where there's a very real chance that nothing happens, and that is still a win for the Suns. There are obviously, at least in my opinion, obvious spots in our roster that could use some bolstering. But at the end of the day, if nothing happens, we're still rolling forward with a great squad, a deep squad, and I won't be hurt by a missed opportunity.
Yeah, and the Suns face a unique challenge too, because they don't exactly have a roster built out to make a lot of trades. When you're looking for trades, you're looking for those mid-level contracts to really make big, significant trades work. So you're looking for like 9-10 million up to maybe 17-18 million per year. The vast majority of the Phoenix Suns are making under 10 million a year. And it goes from DeAndre making 10, and it skips up to Booker making 29, and then it skips again to Chris Paul making 41. So two of your untouchable players are making 41 million and 29 million respectively. So then all the other roster spots are essentially those fillers that you can have in a trade, and it's hard to really build out a trade with the current salary.
Yeah, and talking about, I know I mentioned, the Suns' current situation. Right now, the Suns are sitting in second in the West, only 2.5 back from the Jazz. That has more to do with the Jazz's recent play than ours. I think they've dropped 3 of their last 4. But right now, the Suns are 25-12. Since we last recorded, they won their first game back from the All-Star break against the Trailblazers, dropped a game against the Pacers that was not very fun to watch. Just one of those games I think you just chalk up as not your night, not one thing you can pinpoint, but lost nonetheless. But you lose that game. Going into tonight's game against the Grizzlies, like I said, it's a neck and neck game. We really don't know where it's going. You're only 2.5 back from the 1 seed in the conference. So the moves you're going to make or even consider really are either going to be marginal improvements, I would think, that you can count on, or risks that you can take thinking it's going to make a sizable impact in the long run, the long standing of your team, where you're kind of already fast forwarding, I think, towards playoff basketball. What can we do to set ourselves up for that? So Ryan and I talked, and like we said, there wasn't any one thing that kind of jumped out to us as I think this deal makes sense. I think this player makes sense. And so we tasked our non-Suns fan host, Philip, with the job of, all right, you're coming to the table here. We are the Suns. Pitch us your ideas. What ideas do you think make sense? And then the 3 of us are going to kind of take the time to think through those, give our yes or no reactions, or maybe just take the time to think about, okay, why does this make sense? Why does this not make sense? And maybe we can go a little deeper in that and see, all right, these are the little areas of concern moving forward. These are the areas that might need some improvement. And so that's, I think, going to be a fun exercise. And for those watching on YouTube, I also want to give Ryan some credit for the excellent backdrop he has found for our Zoom meeting. He always gets some great ones. I think Frank wearing DA's chain was my favorite, but someone has made this beautiful graphic showing the entire Sun schedule for the month of March. So it's kind of cool to be able to see that and see what's coming up here from this episode onward to see what the Suns are looking at. And on a quick glance, I think it's also easy to see that outside of a game against the Lakers, this is the easy part of the schedule. These next few weeks are the weeks where the Suns need to rack up some wins to get themselves in a position where they have a little bit of leeway, a little bit of cushion going into the home stretch, which it feels like it's Sixers, Celtics, Clippers, Lakers, Clippers, Sixers. Like it's just every hard team thrown at you in a row. So this month is big. I think this month is huge in terms of setting yourself up to have those reasonable expectations for the playoffs. But that comes back to this trade deadline. How are we going to look after 10 days? But how are the rest of the team going to look? Or how the rest of the league is going to look as well. So, Philip, I'm going to pass the mic off to you. Start us off with our number one, I guess, trade scenario, however you want to take this.
Yeah, so briefly, here are the basic parameters of all of these trades. Booker, CP3, and McHale are the only untouchables on the team.
And the three of us all agreed to that going into this exercise. So for the Ayton fans out there, we do know there are some who believe he's untouchable. We as a group determined those are the three pieces we would never, no matter what, be willing to pass in any reasonable trade.
With an asterisk by Cameron Payne, right? Is that fair?
No.
Okay.
No. But Ryan, that does bring up a good point. In pretty much all of these trades, Cameron Payne, Dooley, and Frank Kaminsky are all making under $2 million. So really, when you hear Dooley, Frank, Cam Payne, even Langston Galloway, each one more in any of these, those five guys are essentially interchangeable in some of these trade scenarios. So we have those guys being interchangeable. Book, CP3, and McHale are untouchable. And then obviously the trade has to make sense, not just for the Suns, but also for the
whoever's
other team.
On the other side.
You can load up the NBA trade machine and get LeBron to fit in with the salary requirements, but obviously that's not going to.
You heard it here first. Work. LeBron James to the Suns.
Yeah, LeBron James for CP3.
Thank you for the thumbnail. I appreciate it.
LeBron James, and then maybe one additional person plus CP3 would work, but it's obviously not gonna happen. So the other team would have to be seemingly okay with it. So that's the parameters for this exercise. Let's start off. This is going to be on brand for all of us because we're going to start off with a trade with my beloved Bulls. So in this first trade scenario, the Suns are going to trade Frank Kaminsky and Cameron Payne. And remember, those are two of the interchangeable guys. And they're going to get back Lauri Markkanen.
Only those two for Markkanen?
Mm-hmm.
I say yes to that, actually.
My genuine reaction would be, I think if I'm the Bulls, I would want more in return, and that would probably be draft capital.
Sure.
But even if you told me Kaminsky, Payne, and a second-round pick, if I'm the Suns, I jump at that. But I like Markkanen a lot. I liked him in college. I thought I think he's a great NBA big in terms of his ceiling. And I also think it would be a really nice piece that fits in very well with the general direction of the Suns, which are smart, heady players, offensively, especially able to facilitate, able to shoot. And then height alone will probably get you some rebounds. So probably not a complaint there either.
I think he would fit the team nicely. I think obviously not a huge sample size this season, only 17 games shown this season, but he's averaging 19 points per game in those. So I'm all about that fit. I also really grew fond of Markkanen this week. In fact, when I saw him comment on one of Paul Macbeth's Instagram post. So apparently Lauri Markkanen is also a Disc Golf Pro Tour fan as well. So that scored some major points for me today.
Yeah, and the reason this could work for the Bulls is they're loaded with their front court with Wendell Carter, Patrick Williams, and Markkanen's coming up on he is an expiring contract. So you could think hypothetically they just need to get off his contract and get some expirings back in return so that they can have some flexibility going into the offseason. It wouldn't necessarily be a great trade for the Bulls, but it gets them the flexibility they're looking for down the road without feeling the pressure to lock in Markkanen.
And an expiring contract in Markkanen too is, in a sense, kind of, I mean, Kawhi's the biggest example ever, but you could even see it with someone like Dario, where it's let's give them a chance in our system, give them a chance to prove that they're worth that next contract. And I mean, obviously Dario has worked out quite well in this situation. Kind of see how you fit in, earn that next deal where you want to be to begin with. But I've always liked the idea of Markkanen. I just like his style of play. Now, I will say I've not watched enough of your beloved Bulls to comment on his defensive ability. Where would you kind of peg him, Philip, in the defensive rating sides of being a big like he is?
So better than Frank Kaminsky, which would be kind of the 1-to-1 that you're looking for. I think Markkanen's quickness and mind for the game would probably be an upgrade there. He's not going to be a DA, but he's also going to be an upgrade with Frank. And then you're essentially saying like, okay, Markkanen maybe small ball 5 with some lineups, but definitely a versatile 4 and another playmaker that they can have out there. So even thinking about Kaminsky, that's not a defensive ploy to have Frank at the lineup. That's for the offensive end. It's the same idea with Markkanen.
Gotcha. No, I like that one. I think if you pulled that one off, I'd be a happy guy about it. Curious what the rest of Suns fans would think, but I like it. Good one for number 1.
All right, trade number 2. This is a less sexy one. This is looking at the Suns' need for additional point guards with playoff pedigree. So this is going to be a trade with the Pistons. This one's going to hurt the second person in this trade. Etuan Moore, Langston Galloway, and Frank for DeLon Wright. Now, DeLon Wright, maybe not a household name, but around a 40% shooter from 3. He has a fantastic assist-to-turnover ratio. He's 4.8 to 1.2 assist-to-turnover, and he has championship experience in Toronto. So what you would be thinking getting a guy like DeLon Wright is, instead of having a Cameron Payne or an Etuan Moore, you would insert someone who has more playoff experience, more big game experience, and somebody who's been in a championship organization before in their young career.
You said that was Etuan, Langston, and Kaminsky?
Yeah.
Initial thought for me is a hard no. I think the Suns are giving too much spread across those 3. I think we've seen Etuan shine in some really valuable minutes in some games leading up to the All-Star break, especially on campaigns off nights. I think Langston Galloway can give you the similar shooting percentage from 3 when he's rocking and rolling the way he does, and Kaminsky has earned a lot of respect for me this season that I'm not sure those 3 are worth right in return. I definitely see what you're talking about for what he brings to the table. I feel like we would be giving up way too much for not the return on investment there. But I'm happy to be in the minority here if other people are behind it.
I like the idea of it. The part I think that might not make sense on the Pistons side of things is, and I don't know, maybe going into this, it's a different frame of mind. I think the Suns have a lot of players that can contribute to a playoff team who might not be on the court for the Suns as a playoff team. And Cam is a great example for me. I think there's a lot of teams that are playoff teams that would love to have an explosive offensive weapon come off the bench. Doesn't require much defensively. Frank's a little harder, obviously. And then I think Langston would get more minutes elsewhere. I think Etuan will get more minutes elsewhere. So it's an interesting kind of, who do I value more? Like, are you getting that value add in return? I do think in terms of the talent you're getting, it does fit well with the Suns. That part I think makes sense. And I do like the idea of the veteran presence. But that's also why I've been arguing this whole year that I think Etuan should be playing more in the first place. So I do think it's a very similar mold. In your opinion, kind of as you put that together, what was your logic in terms of how you thought those pieces would make sense?
Bringing DeLon in, he can score. So he can play off of Dario when Dario's going to be used for playmaking with that second group. So if you have pick and rolls, a lot of teams right now are inverting their pick and roll. So you have a big handling the ball and you have a guard coming up and screening. Delon, Dario, 2-man game to either get Dario going towards the basket with a step on his defender, or to get Delon popping out to the wing for a 3 would be an interesting look for the Suns. So somebody to spread the floor a little bit more with that second group, and to fill in, to hopefully bring some consistency to some of those minutes where it's a coin flip. Like tonight, I think Langston Galloway is getting some minutes off the bench. So bring somebody in who has that playoff experience, who can be there consistently down the stretch of the season.
Yeah, and I think this is a great example of kind of the general idea I was talking about earlier, where, to Ryan's point, it feels like you're giving up a lot of talent or assets, whatever, to get one thing back. But when you're a top seed in the conference, hoping and trying to set those expectations for yourself that that's where I'm supposed to be, that one person filling a gap that you might really need could be more valuable than a slightly lesser player on the court with 2 kind of insurance players on the bench. And that is something too that I think we're going to see come playoff time. And it's going to be, I am nervous about it. I'm a little scared to see how Monty handles that, because the rotations have been so inconsistent. We've had so many players on the court. Come playoff time, you don't see that many players go in a game.
Yep.
And so I think you're going to have to nail down, whether that's through improvements or internal cuts. Like, there's going to be those fringe guys that aren't touching the court. And based on Monty's rotation so far, I haven't even been able to tell who that is other than Javon Carter. Like, he's the only guy that was getting minutes that now isn't. But Dooley's getting more minutes and playing a good amount. Galloway, I thought, was officially on the full-time sitting on the bench, but tonight that looks a little different. Etuan got some run last week or the game before. So I'm confused by where the direction is, which makes it even harder in my mind for this to be like, okay, the trade goes through. What is Monty going to do with that? So I don't know. It's just different.
To me, one of my biggest hangups with this is when I look at the team, where we could use some depth bolstering is in the 4-5 position, and losing Frank after Ayton and Dario, there would be a pretty significant drop off to the next big who can give you valuable minutes that you're not getting back there. And I think those 3 are so vital that losing one of them would just be a tough loss from kind of that tiered drop down in what you're giving.
Yeah, so one of the things I've been thinking about with Frank is best case scenario for Frank in the playoffs is a Kelly Olynyk on the Heat last year. Kelly Olynyk was not playable for the majority of the playoffs, and Frank Kaminsky will likely not be playable for most of the playoffs. He's going to get picked. It's going to be pick and roll, attack Frank Kaminsky, go right at him.
LeBron will be yelling,
yes,
Frank, which is exactly what he did with Duncan Robinson and so many others, where there's an obvious mismatch out here. Just get him to me.
So the benefit of having somebody like Olynyk or a Kaminsky is, like last finals when Bam went down, Olynyk can come in and he's at least competent. He knows the system. He can score points, but he's also taking up a roster spot that you might be able to have a better fit. So it's, again, I think to Ryan's point, it's the trade-off between, do you want that insurance of having a guy like Frank on your bench, or do you want to be a little bit more aggressive with the fit, assuming all goes according to plan and you can run with DA and Dario at the 5? Yeah,
and see, my fear just is Dario, who has already been injury prone a little bit this season, and some of those other things. To me, it's the high risk, high reward doesn't pay off for me, but I see the logic behind it. Absolutely.
I think one thing, kind of just to close this one in terms of conversation, I do think it'll be interesting to see Crowder's minutes in the playoffs, because I'm not going to be surprised to see him play the 5. Yeah, I mean, just seeing how the small ball lineups can be put
PJ
together.
Tucker style.
I mean, why not? Like, you've seen models of it work in the past, and I think Crowder can do it if needed. And I don't think it's I want that or we should, but I think there's going to be times where an undersized Jay Crowder is still a better option than a healthy, tall Frank Kaminsky come playoff time. So it is interesting as we kind of start just looking towards that next half of the season when that shift comes, because I think it's coming. I think it'd be crazy not to. All right, Philip, how many more do you got so I can make sure I time this out well? You got three
more, but I'm going to go quick on this one. We're just going to bring this one down to just one question. Would you be willing to give up Jalen Smith for a more veteran player this year? So are you willing to give up the 3 additional seasons and potential growth from Jalen in order to have a better run at it this season?
Yes.
Okay.
I would.
Ethan, what do you think?
I would not. And the only reason is because I still think in a magic world, there's a chance that DeAndre Ayton is not a part of the future of this team. And so the financial benefit of having a young big under contract who can take those minutes long term, that's a really valuable thing. And you see the Bulls have too many of those for their own good, but that's a good, valuable asset to be able to have that. And you see so many teams now. I mean, the Warriors for who knows how many of those. I mean, how many weird centers like Festus Ezeli, I think, was the first one. Damian Jones ended up being one. Poor man JaVale McGee eventually. But it's like that's a spot in your roster on a contender that can be filled with a cheaper option that does the job well, and it doesn't have to be a big share. Financially, I think that is a nice piece to have. And it's just too early for me right now to give up on him. I think coronavirus really set him back. A lack of offseason really set him back. And from seeing how well our young guys have developed and seeing how sure James Jones has been with his picks, Cam Johnson being a great example, I wouldn't be willing to do that quite yet. But I think part of that also is I don't quite feel like we are a contend for the finals, or maybe not the final, just a trophy. Like, I don't think we're officially in that region of we have a playoff window, we need to seize it. I think if that time comes, it would be next year when it's Paul's last year. Financially, this is kind of it. And then you're going to see some massive restructure, some change come after. So I'm not quite there yet, but I do think that type of a question will get asked next year for sure, whether it's with him or some other young talent that gets brought in.
All right, so Ryan, this one might just be for you then. My 4th and 5th trades are both with the Kings. This one is a swing. This allows the Kings to get off a 3-year deal and allows them to take back a smaller 3-year deal and then a young player too. Jay Crowder, Javon Carter, Jalen Smith for Harrison Barnes.
So unfortunately, I'm the wrong person for this because I just don't like Harrison Barnes. So I'm a no, just because I'm not a big fan of his game, and I think he's kind of in the Chandler Parsons world where.
No, that's just you being personal on the attacks there. Don't do that to him.
I think he's a better player than Chandler Parsons, but I think he's paid more than he's worth.
All right, there you go. Last trade. I saved the most slanderous, potentially the most slanderous for last. We're staying with the Kings. Suns trade DeAndre Ayton
for Marvin Bagley,
and they get back Rashawn Holmes and Hassan Whiteside, and immediately cut Whiteside.
I'm confused. Where's the benefit here for the Suns? You have to, if you put a 1st-round pick on there, I'd consider it.
Okay. Ryan, you seemed excited.
Well, I just liked that Rashawn Holmes was coming home, but then I heard the rest of the deal and I got instantly less interested. That's probably going to be a no for me, dog.
So how many picks would they have to throw in to sweeten this pot?
At least a 1st or like a 2nd and a 3rd.
Here's my thing with Whiteside. Legitimately, I think Whiteside, I mean, he's a guaranteed 15 and 10, right? I mean, in my mind, obviously not this year, but when he's playing his best, I would say so. And I think Rashawn Holmes is legitimately the perfect big to come off the bench no matter what. But I think if you're getting rid of, Here's my thing. I think there are two reasons you would get rid of DeAndre Ayton ever. Just like ever. One of them would be because you're getting some talent back that you put Ayton with a bunch of other pieces to get, and that team is banking on Ayton doing something there that he hasn't done here. My perfect example, which this has been plastered on every single everything, would be in a Karl Anthony Towns type trade, where it seems from I'll just say that I follow a lot of Vikings writers and Minnesota beat writers just from the Viking stuff who cover the T-Wolves. There is a weird shift seemingly happening that the Timberwolves are going to be Anthony's team. It seems that Anthony Edwards is going to be the guy in Minnesota. Whether that is from a financial standpoint of marketability, which to his credit, he is just 10 out of 10 guy. Like everyone loves him. Play style is great. But with that said, you then have the D'Lo Cat thing, which was like the old face of the franchise. Weird battle there. We'll see how it plays out. So let's just say Karl Anthony Towns is disgruntled once out. Wouldn't be a shock to me. That's you throw Ayton with a couple talented guys that can play and a pick, and that's how you get Ayton out of here. So that's option one. The only other way I see the Ayton thing not happening is you're not willing to pay him the money he thinks he's due. So you want to capitalize on a depreciating asset before you're proven right and he's not worth that money. This is the first time that him and Bridges in that class could get extended. I think the Suns have a massive mess on their hands in terms of they've got a lot of stuff to juggle because they're going to have to be dealing with Paul's option, which he will obviously take unless he's just feeling really generous and wants to give money back. But I don't think people do that when it's like $44 million. They're going to have Bridges, who I believe is worth more than anticipated. And I think you're going to have Ayton, who is worth less than anticipated. But you also are dealing with people and egos and a lot of stuff. So I do think the idea of trading Ayton does make sense to me personally. I think if you're going to do it, I lean the direction of option one, where this isn't just to get him off the books. This is we're putting him with ABC and a couple picks to get something else. So the Kings thing, they would have to legitimately throw in like 2 first-round picks for me to make that make sense.
With DeAndre Ayton, you have to win in the court of public opinion, and that would be a deal that I think would leave a sour taste in a lot of Suns mouths, just in the way they talk and stand DeAndre Ayton, just in the blog spheres and the Twitter spheres that we're in. I think you would have to make a good deal that can justify that move for the fan base.
I would like to hit the pause button on that. I think that makes sense for 99% of general managers, but we're dealing with the guy who picked Cameron Johnson and got bashed across the board and then followed that up by saying, you like that one? How about this big guy out of Maryland? So I do think we have, for the first time, a guy in charge who says, I'm doing what I think is best for this team. And to his credit, everything so far has worked out well. But I do agree with Ryan in the sense of you would need to get something tangible in return. And let's just say the Kings throw in 2 first rounds, or you can honestly play that who knows what with a bunch of other teams throwing potential bigs and some assets in terms of picks. Like even if you get 2 first-round picks, even if they're unprotected, and a team like the Kings, you think those are going to be some pretty good picks. That is still saying we are trading a tangible asset that we at least know the value of for 2 question marks. But the part that I do like about that idea is if you think your team is going to be contending for the next couple years, the ability to get good draft capital that's in the lottery is so good because you're usually not getting that when you're a good team. And it takes a great team to turn those 20 to 30 overall picks into people that continue to push a franchise forward. So I do like the idea. I'm going to be honest. Like I don't view Ayton as an untouchable. I don't even consider him close, which I know a lot of people hate, and that's fine. But I would legitimately like take a flyer on Bagley in that deal. and I think he got hurt tonight. I haven't seen
fractured his hand.
I haven't seen everything, but like that for me is a flyer on someone with a high ceiling plus capital. Marketing, high ceiling plus draft capital. So I don't know what that's going to look like. I do think the Suns are going to be in a really tough situation moving forward, though, which does scare me.
Yeah, and the part of the idea is realistically, if Suns are thinking championships or serious Western Conference contention, your window is this year and next year, potentially extended a third year. So then you're looking, okay, what do Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and Mikal Bridges need the next 2 years? Do they need
a cheap option at center to not take money from other places?
They need someone who can sign shorter deals, who isn't going to break the bank down the road, so that they can stay flexible, especially next season and then potentially into that third
season. So every center from the Warriors. Every center from the Warriors.
Right. Yeah. Right. And that's the calculus. That's the calculus saying, okay, a guy like Rashawn Holmes could provide this team what DeAndre Ayton needs to provide this team without the potential that Ayton has later in his career when he would need to be more of a centerpiece. So it is more of an immediate fit and taking a swing at championships at the same time, keeping yourself more flexible. And that's essentially saying, instead of building around Ayton and Booker, we're building around Booker, Bridges, and then whatever else happens in the years following that.
That fits the mold too of how the Warriors handled their bigs when they got valuable. They got rid of them. Like, great, you're wanting to offer Harrison Barnes or whoever $80 million over. Great, take them. We'll put that money towards something else that will value us in the long run. And you saw that with their bigs when they got off their rookie deals. They're like, sorry, man, we can get another rookie to do the same thing. And I do not think this is a fair comparison in terms of talent and production, but if you watch Rashawn Holmes play, him as an example, there's plenty of others I could use, and you are making, for the YouTube watchers, you can watch my hand here and follow along. If you're watching a line graph, watching the productivity, it is never going to dip, because a lot of the reasons he's productive offensively and defensively is effort mixed with athleticism and being in the right place. And unfortunately with Ayton is either way up here or way down here, which has led to the mixed reactions and a lot of people being upset. And the group in favor loves to pick the points from up here. The points against always are great for the other party. But if you could have someone who is consistent and you know exactly what they're going to provide night in and night out, I would love that. And that is the one thing I hate currently about Ayton's playing. And it's the part that I love about a guy like Chris Paul, where you know what you're going to get. If the shot's not falling, he will facilitate. If people aren't finishing, he can take over. You know what you're going to get, and it's consistent. And consistency is so key in the playoffs. Like, that's the thing. You're playing another team however many times. It's not going to be that, 4 nights you magically become better. He's got to be consistent. And I think the Heat from last year's playoffs are a great example of that. Like, that is a team that worked their butt off, consistently outworked the other team, and got good results. It makes me very nervous that in a playoff run this year, we're going to have a lot of hope and a lot of expectations on a guy that we can't count on to come get 10-10 against a Grizzlies team without 3 of their centers. So for that point, I do agree. But guys, we're kind of wrapping up here. We just got another minute or two. Anything else as we look to the trade deadline in 10 days? Do you think the Suns will make a trade? If you had to go with a gut answer here, yes or no, Philip, where are you sitting on it?
Having looked at the the trade machine for an hour and a half this afternoon, no. I mean, it's hard, and some of those deals are stretches, thinking the other team could come along. The Suns just don't have the salaries to make a big splash. So unless you're going to do something that might be sacrilege, like getting rid of Ayton, then I can't see anything major happening.
Ryan?
Yeah, I think we're going to keep rocking with what we got, and for the first time in a long time, I'm completely cool with that.
Yep.
and excited to see what the rest of the season holds. But like you said, we've got a stretch here now where those guys who might be slacking a little bit can really hopefully pull a few games together and get rolling before April hits.
Yeah, honestly.
And real quick,
go ahead.
Suns fans, be patient with the front office because this is hard. Getting together deals when you just don't have those mid-level contracts. This is a seriously difficult task for the front office. Their options are trade away young cornerstone pieces or try to work some magic with like $4 million deals and $2 million deals and $1.5 million deals.
Yep. Well, guys, hope you enjoyed this episode. Guys, appreciate you recording it with me. If you're watching on YouTube, again, like the video, subscribe, hop in the comments, whatever you need to do. And if you're listening on any of the places you get your podcasts, we appreciate that. Feel free to give us a follow. But for Philip and Ryan, I am Ethan Shutt, and this has been The Valley, a Phoenix Suns podcast.
We out.